The sun had barely begun its descent when the messenger arrived, a figure wrapped in the coarse, dust-streaked robes typical of desert traders. I watched from the shadow of a jagged rock outcrop, the heat of the day still clinging stubbornly to the sand beneath my boots. The red sands stretched endlessly, a savage sea of dunes rippling as far as the eye could see, concealing dangers both ancient and immediate. The messenger approached cautiously, his dark eyes flicking to the horizon before he handed me a small, weathered package wrapped in cracked leather. Inside, a brittle map, yellowed with age and marked with strange symbols and cryptic annotations. This was no ordinary treasure hunt. The map promised the location of the Chronos artifact, a relic whispered about in the darkest corners of mercenary camps and desert bazaars. Said to bend time itself, it was a prize that could change everything. I traced the faded lines with a calloused finger, the texture rough against my skin. The desert wind whispered through the canyon, carrying with it the scent of dry earth and distant storms. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the mix of excitement and dread that came with chasing legends through unforgiving terrain. The sands didn't forgive mistakes, and neither did the men who preyed upon fools chasing myths. Yari Mekari appeared silently from behind a ridge, his wiry frame silhouetted against the fiery horizon. Born of the desert nomad tribes, his knowledge of the terrain was unmatched. His dark skin glistened with a sheen of sweat, and the traditional markings on his arms seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the land itself. He dropped a water skin beside me wordlessly, his eyes sharp and calculating. We didn't waste words here. The desert demanded efficiency. Together, we studied the map beneath the fading light. The markings hinted at a buried temple complex hidden beneath the shifting dunes, somewhere far beyond the last known settlements. But we weren't alone in this hunt. As the first stars began to prick the sky, I spotted a distant figure cresting a nearby dune, a scout from a rival expedition. His silhouette flickered through the heat haze, a ghost in the endless desert. His gaze locked on ours for a heartbeat before he vanished back into the sandstorm brewing on the horizon. The desert was already closing in, its breath hot and stinging with sand. I clenched the silver locket hidden beneath my shirt, a relic from a past I kept locked away as tightly as my emotions. The wind whipped around us, tearing at the edges of the map and carrying a harsh warning: trust no one, not even the shifting sands. That night, as shadows deepened and the temperature plummeted, I lay awake beneath a vast, indifferent sky. The map was a beacon and a curse, a promise of power and a harbinger of betrayal. Somewhere in these endless dunes lay the Chronos artifact, and every step closer meant deeper danger. I knew the desert would test me, as it had tested every soul who dared to seek its secrets. But I was ready. More than that, I had to be. The past I ran from was catching up, and the only way forward was through the ruthless heart of the red sands. The game had begun, and failure was not an option. Morning came with the crack of a distant whippoorwill and the sharp sting of sand in my eyes. Yari was already packing supplies, his movements precise and practiced. We would move fast and quiet, shadows among shadows, ghosts within the dunes. The rival scouts would be watching, waiting for a mistake. But I had a few tricks left: quick thinking, sharpened instincts, and a ruthlessness born of betrayal. As we set out, the desert stretched before us like a silent challenge, dunes waving like frozen waves beneath the pale blue sky. Somewhere beneath those sands, the Chronos artifact waited, a prize that could rewrite time or damn us all to its unforgiving grasp. The red sands were alive, and they weren't just watching, they were waiting. And so was I. The hunt had begun. The sun had barely breached the horizon when Yari Mekari nudged me awake with the tip of his worn leather boot. The desert was already stirring, the first whispers of heat rising off the endless dunes like ghosts of the day to come. I pulled my scarf tighter around my face, the coarse fabric scraping my sun-roughened skin, and followed Yari out of our makeshift camp. The red sands stretched before us, an ocean of ochre waves rolling into infinity. Each dune caught the morning light differently, some golden, others shadowed in a deceptive coolness. To an untrained eye, it was a barren wasteland, but to Yari, every ridge and hollow told a story. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the horizon as if reading a book written in the language of wind and sand. "The scouts moved east last night," Yari whispered, his voice low, barely disturbing the delicate morning stillness. "Seleni's people are closing in." I nodded, swallowing the bitter taste of rising adrenaline. The rivalry had already tightened its grip on me, a weight heavier than the scorching sun above. Trust was a currency I no longer dealt in freely, but with Yari at my side, survival felt marginally less impossible. We set off, our boots sinking slightly into the warm sand, the rhythm of our footsteps a steady pulse against the vast silence. The desert seemed to breathe around us, an ancient beast, patient yet merciless. Every step was a gamble. Every glance over my shoulder, a reminder that eyes watched from afar. Hours passed under the relentless sun. Yari pointed out subtle signs, a broken twig half buried in the sand, the faintest footprints leading away from a dried riverbed, the ripple patterns that betrayed recent passage. Each clue was a thread in the complex tapestry of the desert's secrets. By midday, the heat pressed down like a physical force. My throat burned, the dry air scratching at my lungs. Sweat soaked through my gear, crystallizing salt on my skin. Despite the exhaustion, I kept my gaze fixed ahead, driven by the single-minded hunger that had brought me here to find the Chronos artifact and escape the ghosts of my past. Suddenly, atop a ridge, I caught sight of movement. Silhouettes against the blinding sky, figures darting between dunes with practiced stealth. Seleni's scouts. Their presence was a knife edge of tension, slicing through the day's monotony. "We're spotted," I muttered, signaling Yari to fall back into the shadows of a nearby outcropping. He nodded, already scanning for an alternative route. "They'll expect us to move south. We'll go north less direct, but safer." The decision was made in a heartbeat. We veered away from the path we plotted, trading distance for cover. The desert was a maze, and every choice could tip the scales between life and death. As the sun began its slow descent, a cool breeze whispered over the sands, carrying with it the scent of change. The sky darkened imperceptibly, dust swirling on the wind. Yari's eyes narrowed. "A storm's coming," he said grimly. "First of the season." We quickened our pace, the horizon rippling with heat and sand. The storm would be a wall of fury sand like needles, wind like a banshee's scream. To be caught unprepared meant certain death. Night found us crouched behind a jagged ridge, the stars hidden beneath thickening clouds of dust. Around a meager fire, Yari and I exchanged words sparingly, the crackling flames the only sound in the oppressive dark. My thoughts drifted to Selene. Her cold, calculating presence haunted the edges of my mind. She was as relentless as the desert itself, and I knew this game of cat and mouse was far from over. The wind picked up suddenly, howling like a living thing. Sand lashed at our faces, stealing sight and breath. The storm had arrived. We scrambled to secure our gear, the world dissolving into a swirling chaos of ochre and fury. Every instinct screamed to find shelter, to survive. Amid the tempest, I felt the weight of the desert's unforgiving nature settle deep into my bones. This was no longer just a journey for treasure. It was a test of will, a battle against the shifting sands and the rival eyes that hunted us relentlessly. And I would not go down without a fight. The red sands were coming alive all around us, and I was ready to meet them head-on. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the rolling waves of the red sands when Yari Mekari halted abruptly, his dark eyes scanning the horizon with a practiced intensity. The desert's relentless heat still clung to the air despite the waning daylight, but the whisper of a hidden secret stirred beneath their feet, urging them onward. I crouched beside him, the cryptic map folded carefully in my weather-beaten hand, its faded markings guiding us to a place few had seen for centuries. The sands here shifted uneasily, as if guarding the ancient truths buried beneath their endless expanse. There, Yari breathed, pointing to a subtle break in the dune's curve. Beneath the swirling dust, a line of weathered stone jutted upward, a doorway half swallowed by time itself. The surface was carved with symbols I recognized from old desert tales, serpents entwined with stars, and glyphs warning of fate's cruel twists. Despite the desert's relentless assault, the entrance stood resilient, a silent sentinel to the secrets it concealed. I knelt before the threshold, my fingers brushing away centuries of sand and grit. The air was cooler here, a fleeting reprieve from the sun's oppressive glare. As I traced the worn carvings, a shiver ran through me, not from the cold, but from the weight of history pressing down. The Chronos artifact was said to lie within, a relic of time's own making, capable of bending reality in ways that defied reason. I had chased rumors and lies before, but this was different. This was the edge of legend. "We need light," I said, pulling a torch from my pack. Yari nodded, his eyes never leaving the shifting dunes behind us. "Seleni's team won't be far. They're as hungry as we are, and twice as ruthless." The temple's mouth yawned before us, darkness swallowing the flickering torchlight as we stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and ancient stone, heavy with the silence of forgotten centuries. Our footsteps echoed softly against the carved walls, hieroglyphs telling stories of gods and men, of time lost and reclaimed. But beneath the beauty lay danger pressure plates hidden beneath cracked tiles, narrow shafts ready to spill sand or poison at the slightest misstep. "Watch your step," Yari whispered, moving with the sure-footed grace of a desert nomad. He knelt to inspect the floor, pointing out a faint crack that betrayed a trap. My breath caught. One false move here would be fatal. Years in the field had taught me to trust instinct over eyes alone, and trust me, this temple was a labyrinth of death. Deeper inside, the walls grew tighter, the air heavier. Flickers of torchlight caught on metal mechanisms, ancient gears that hinted at a technology far beyond their time. I paused before a wall, adorned with a cryptic inscription, fingers tracing the intricate script. It spoke of time's fickle nature and the cost of meddling with fate. A chill ran down my spine. This was no ordinary treasure hunt. The stakes were far higher. Outside, the desert wind carried the faintest sound of movement. I knew Seleni's team was closing in, their presence a dark shadow lurking just beyond the threshold. I could almost feel her cold gaze, the silver scar along her jawline, a constant reminder of the ruthless ambition driving her forward. She was brilliant, dangerous, and utterly relentless. "We're not alone," I said quietly, signaling to Yari. He nodded grimly, checking our rear as we pressed onward. The temple seemed to pulse with every step, ancient magic and mortal danger entwining in a dance as old as the sands themselves. As we navigated the maze of corridors and traps, I felt the weight of history pressing closer, the boundaries between past and present blurring. Every inscription, every carved symbol, was a piece of a puzzle that could unlock unimaginable power or unleash disaster. Hours passed like moments, the temple revealing its secrets inch by inch. But the desert outside was unforgiving, and the race was far from over. Seleni's footsteps echoed in the distance, a heartbeat away. I paused at the edge of a vast chamber, the air thick with dust and the scent of ancient incense. At its center lay a pedestal, worn but unmistakably the resting place of the Chronos artifact. My heart pounded, a fierce mix of desperation and determination flooding my veins. The red sands did not forgive, and neither would I. But as my fingers brushed the cold metal surface of the pedestal, a faint rumble shook the temple. Dust fell from the vaulted ceiling, and somewhere deep below, ancient mechanisms began to stir. The race for the artifact was no longer just a battle against rival explorers. It was a struggle against time itself. And in this buried temple, every secret uncovered only deepened the danger. The sands outside shifted, swallowing the horizon as the sun vanished beneath the dunes. The desert was alive, watching, waiting, and so was Celine. I took a steadying breath. The game had truly begun. The horizon bled a dull ochre, the sky churning as the first whispers of the sandstorm crept over the endless dunes. I stood rigid, the brittle parchment of the cryptic map clenched in one hand, the other resting on the grip of my sidearm. Beside me, Yari Mekari's dark eyes scanned the horizon, his wiry frame taut with alertness. The desert was shifting, not just beneath our boots, but in the very air around us, a warning and a threat. We weren't alone. Far off, the faint glint of metal and movement betrayed Celine Voss's expedition, their silhouettes etched against the rising dust. The woman herself, elegant and icy, was a storm as fierce as the one blowing in. Her piercing eyes caught mine across the barren stretch, a silent challenge that neither of us could afford to ignore. Then the winds howled, a guttural roar rising from the vast emptiness, swallowing the world in a choking veil of sand. The storm was upon us. There was no time for the usual dance of cat and mouse. Survival demanded unexpected alliances. I gestured sharply to Yari, our unspoken agreement clear: we would seek Celine and parley, if only to ride out the desert's wrath. We approached cautiously, the crunch of sand underfoot muffled by the storm's fury. Celine's camp was barely visible, a cluster of tents and equipment half buried in the swirling dust. She stood at the center, her silver scar catching the fading light, eyes sharp and unyielding. Draven she greeted, voice cold but pragmatic. I suppose even you can recognize when the desert is stronger than your pride. I met her gaze steadily. A temporary truce, then, to survive. She nodded, a flicker of something unreadable passing through her expression. Inside the shelter of ancient temple ruins, the storm's howling was a distant thunder. Lanterns cast flickering shadows over faces, etched with fatigue and suspicion. Celine and I sat opposite each other, the space between us charged with unspoken threats and fragile necessity. Yari kept watch near the entrance, his presence a steadying force amid the tension. The minutes stretched, punctuated by the crackle of radio static and the occasional murmur of guarded conversation. Every glance, every whispered word was a test of trust, or the lack thereof. Amid this fragile peace, Lena Voss slipped away. I caught a glimpse of her soft features, usually hidden behind dust-streaked goggles, as she melted into the shadows. That night, under the cover of darkness, she found me. Her voice was low, trembling with a mix of fear and resolve. "Kale," she whispered, "there are things you don't know. Things Celine won't tell you. I think her obsession is dangerous. Not just for us, but for all of us." Her words planted a seed of doubt, a fragile hope that perhaps the unyielding fortress of Celine's will had cracks after all. The storm raged on, relentless and unforgiving. Sand pelted the temple walls like 1,000 tiny daggers, blurring the edges of reality and testing the limits of endurance. Inside, the uneasy alliance held, but barely. Eyes darted, hands twitched near weapons, and every whispered conversation carried the weight of betrayal. I felt the old familiar pull of distrust, the sharp edge of past wounds threatening to sever what little fragile trust had formed. Yet amidst the chaos, a new path emerged, one forged not in certainty, but in the desperate hope that even enemies could become allies when the sands themselves were the enemy. As the storm finally began to abate, the desert lay silent, but the echoes of that uneasy night lingered. The game had changed. And so had we. The desert does not forgive, but perhaps, just perhaps, it allows for second chances if one is willing to grasp them with open hands and wary hearts. And I, Cale Draven, was about to learn just how fragile those chances could be. The red sands outside glistened faintly under the settling dust, the sun a pale orb fighting through the haze. Our fragile truce was a thin line stretched taut over a chasm of suspicion. Every shadow seemed to conceal a dagger, every silence a whispered threat. I tightened my grip on the worn locket hidden beneath my shirt, a talisman of a past I was desperate to outrun but could never escape. The desert winds, harsh and unyielding, whispered promises of betrayal and survival. Tomorrow, the hunt would resume. But tonight, under the watchful gaze of ancient stones and restless spirits, I was reminded that in the red sands, no alliance was safe and no trust cheap. The storm had passed, but the real tempest was just beginning. The sun scorched down on the red sands, a relentless orb that beat against my weathered skin and burned the edges of my patience. Each grain of sand seemed to mock the fragile alliances we'd forged, whispering ancient secrets and warnings I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. Beside me, Yari Mekari moved with a sure-footed grace born of a lifetime navigating this merciless terrain. His dark eyes flicked ahead, reading the desert's subtle signs as if they were written in the very air. "We're close," he said quietly, voice rough but steady. The sand shifts oddly near the last markers. It's like the desert's trying to hide something. I nodded, my fingers tightening around the worn leather of the map that felt less like guidance and more like a curse. The Chronos artifact, the prize that had drawn us deep into the heart of this endless wasteland, was said to bend time itself. Power like that was a drug, and I was already addicted. But the desert wasn't the only danger. The fractures in our group were widening. Trust was a scarce commodity, and betrayal lurked just beneath the surface, waiting to strike. That night, the camp was a fragile thing, flickering like the flames that danced in the firelight. I sat apart from the others, the dry wind carrying the scent of dust and distant smoke. My mind drifted back to a darker time, to a unit shattered by treachery, to a past I'd tried to bury beneath layers of grit and survival. Yari settled beside me, breaking the silence. "You carry ghosts," he observed, voice low but without judgment. I glanced at him, the shadows from the flames casting flickering shapes across his face. "Aren't we all?" He chuckled softly, a dry sound that blended with the desert's whisper. "That's why you keep that locket hidden, isn't it?" I didn't answer, but the weight of the worn pendant against my chest was a steady reminder of everything I'd lost and everything I was fighting for. Days passed in a blur of shifting dunes and tense negotiations. Lena Voss lingered on the edges of our group, her conflicted gaze betraying the loyalty she pretended to hold. Selini's shadow loomed large, cold and unyielding, a constant reminder that the race was far from over. Then the betrayal struck like a sudden sandstorm, violent and disorienting. A trusted ally someone I'd counted on had stolen a vital fragment of the map, throwing our plans into chaos and tipping the scales toward our rivals. The revelation hit with a brutal finality, fracturing what little trust remained. Confrontations followed, words sharp as the desert thorns. Accusations flew like arrows, and the fragile truce within our camp unraveled under the weight of suspicion. Lena's secret communications with Celine became an open wound, her loyalties torn between blood and conscience. In the cold stillness of night, I stood watch alone, the stars above vast and indifferent. The desert seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. My heart pounded with a fierce mix of desperation and determination. There was no turning back. The red sands had claimed many before me, but I wasn't ready to be one of them. Not yet. I tightened my grip on the locket, the metal cool against my palm. The past was a ghost that would haunt me, but the future was mine to fight for. And fight I would, until the desert's final secret was mine to command. As dawn broke, painting the endless sands in hues of gold and blood, I scanned the horizon. Rival flags fluttered, Seleni's forces closing in with ruthless precision. The betrayal had cost us dearly, but it had also forged a new resolve, a sharper edge to my purpose. The race for the Chronos artifact was far from over, and the desert's echoes of betrayal would only grow louder before the final silence. I was ready. The sands shifted beneath my boots, whispering promises of power and peril. And somewhere in the depths of the red sands, the Chronos artifact awaited. But so did the betrayals yet to come. The afternoon sun hung low, casting a fierce amber glow over the rippling dunes as Yari Mekari guided me toward a cluster of tents nestled in the shadow of a rocky outcrop. The air was thick with the scent of dry earth and burnt wood, mingling with faint hints of incense and cooking fires. I kept my eyes sharp, scanning the horizon for any signs of rival scouts. But here, with the nomads, I felt a fragile reprieve from the relentless chase. "This is where you'll learn what the desert won't tell you," Yari said quietly, his voice steady but tinged with reverence. His dark skin glistened with sweat, and the traditional desert markings on his arms seemed to pulse with the wisdom of generations. They've lived with these sands longer than the ruins have existed. The nomad camp was alive with quiet activity. Figures moved silently between tents, their faces wrapped in keffiyehs and scarves to shield against the shifting winds. Children darted about, their laughter a rare melody in this harsh landscape. At the heart of the encampment, a fire flickered, sending sparks spiraling into the cooling air. Around it sat a circle of elders, their faces etched with lines of hardship and endurance, their eyes reflecting the flame's glow. Yari led me forward, nodding to one of the elders, a woman with silver-streaked hair and piercing dark eyes that seemed to see through the veil of time itself. She welcomed us with a nod, her voice a low rumble as she began to recount ancient tales of the Red Sands. "The temples are not just tombs," she said, her gaze locking onto mine. "They are guardians of time itself, built by those who understood its flow and its dangers. The Chronos artifact is a gift and a curse, bound to the sands and the storms that guard it." The stories she wove were vivid and unsettling. Legends of explorers swallowed by shifting dunes, of time loops where days folded back upon themselves, and of betrayals older than the desert. I listened, the weight of her words settling like sand in my mind. Myra, a young scout cloaked in dust-streaked fabrics, observed me silently from the edge of the firelight. Her eyes were sharp and unreadable, a living embodiment of the desert's mysteries. Yari spoke to her briefly in their native tongue, and she nodded before stepping forward. "We know the paths through the sands, the hidden entrances," Myra said softly, her voice carrying the crisp edge of desert wind. "But the desert demands respect. It tests those who seek its secrets." Her warning was clear. The nomad's knowledge was invaluable, but it came with strings woven into the fabric of ancient customs and survival. As dusk turned to night, I found myself pondering the nomad's words beneath a sky littered with stars. The desert's vastness was humbling, its silence a sharp contrast to the turmoil within me. The Chronos artifact was no mere treasure. It was a force that could unravel time itself, and the cost of wielding it remained unknown. Before dawn, Yari and I set out toward the nearby trading post where Rashid al-Nasir operated. The market was a cacophony of colors, sounds, and scents, a stark contrast to the desert's quiet austerity. Stalls overflowed with spices, weapons, and trinkets, while traders shouted over one another, plying their wares with practiced urgency. Rashid was a wiry man, his face weathered by sun and sand, but his eyes gleamed with cunning. He greeted me with a measured nod, his smile tight and unreadable. "Kale Draven," he said, his voice smooth but edged with calculation. "I hear you're chasing ghosts in the red sands. Perhaps I can help for a price." We haggled over supplies, water purifiers, climbing gear, and rare maps pieced together from whispered rumors. Rashid's information about rival factions and shifting alliances was as valuable as the goods he traded. Yet beneath the exchange, I sensed an undercurrent of self-interest and hidden agendas. "Trust is a rare commodity in these lands," Rashid remarked, pocketing a handful of coins. "But sometimes it pays to keep your enemies close." Back at camp, Yari shared more insights from the nomads, their stories layering my understanding of the desert's deadly ballet. The sands could turn ally to adversary in moments, and the ancient temples were riddled with traps, not just of stone and metal, but of time itself. That night, as the cold air bit through my worn desert gear, I traced my fingers over the worn locket hidden beneath my shirt. Memories of past betrayals flickered in my mind, but so did a flicker of hope. The nomad's wisdom and Rashid's reluctant aid had fortified me, yet the path ahead remained perilous. The desert was watching, waiting for the next move, and I was ready to make mine. But beneath the stars, a question gnawed at me. How much of what I had learned was truth, and how much was a carefully woven web designed to ensnare me? The sands held their secrets close, and so too did the people who called them home. The hunt for the Chronos artifact was no longer a solitary chase. It was a complex game of trust and deception, where every alliance could shift like the dunes themselves. And the desert had only just begun to reveal its hand.